Hi, this is Greg Maddox, and you're listening to Out of Left Field on the Grueling Truth Network.
Hey guys, Graham and Chris back here with you again out of Left Field, brought to you by the Grueling Truth Network at Grueling Truth on Twitter, thegruelingtruth.net. A lot of stuff to get to today, man. You know, if you call Sunday or Saturday rather at the Masters moving day, that is pretty much what the next 6 weeks are going to be in the Major League Baseball offseason, because everybody's freaking moving, right? You know, we're getting guys are doing their visits. They're trying to get every dollar they can out of every deal possible and try and find a place to kind of land that will hopefully get them some money, and if they're interested in it, maybe some decent competition. That being said, we have seen quite a few big-name players just this week alone find themselves in a couple of new spots. Carlos Santana, we mentioned him just last week in talking about the Robinson Cano trade to the Phillies. He's on the move again back to his original home. No, not Philadelphia, but in Cleveland. We'll discuss that. Cleveland has really kind of been the team that has had us scratching our heads so far this offseason, as Yonder Alonso now goes to Chicago. Which Chicago team? We'll discuss that. The Yankees pick up a pitcher since they missed on Patrick Corbin, and the Houston Astros also end up agreeing to terms with a former Indian as well. Let's start with, though, the New York Mets picking up their catcher Wilson Ramos. A lot of talk about the Mets being interested in JT Realmuto, right? They were looking at the Marlins catcher. The Marlins are going to end up moving him at some point. We know he's going to get moved. It's a matter of where. It's a matter of when and what they can get back in return for him. And it looks like at the end of it that Brodie Van Wagenen just said, you know what, the hell with this. I'm tired of waiting around. Wilson Ramos had a little bit of injury, so you can get him at a bit of a better price coming in, but had a really nice year, had an all-star caliber year, right? In Tampa, gets hurt right before the all-star game, can't go ahead and actually participate in the festivities, and then gets dealt to Philadelphia with the injury still lingering, comes back in, has a really nice end to his year. They end up getting Ramos along with a $2 million signing bonus and a $6.25 million salary. Man, you know, I'm not totally against this. I think it's a nice move for them. Instead of getting left out in the dark, they go find a good piece to fill the void. It's no Realmuto, but Wilson Ramos is no slouch, and he's comfortable in the National League East.
Right. And I think that even more importantly, it starts to make some of the things that they've been doing this offseason make a little bit more sense. I don't know that –
Who the hell would have thought I'd hear you say that?
I don't know that it makes them a contender in any way, shape, or form. I don't think it does. But I think one of the important things is it adds a bat to a lineup that is desperately in need of one. And I think that their previous attempt to pick up a bat was generally misguided. So he had sort of an interesting year last year. That is, Wilson Ramos had sort of an interesting year last year. He played, 101 games in Philadelphia?
In Tampa. He started off the year in Tampa and then got hurt right before.
Oh, I'm sorry, 30 games in Philadelphia, 78 in Tampa.
Right.
But in both places, he hit the ball a ton after he came back from the injury. The question mark for me, I think, in this whole thing is, does it make sense for Wilson Ramos, or for them to pick up Wilson Ramos, if they're going to pay all of the money that they are going to pay based on that misguided attempt to pick up a bat from the Mariners? I just
Well, I mean, even with Ramos, if you look at the total amount that his deal can be worth with the Mets, you're looking at a max value of $27.5 million, right? $19 million guaranteed with some incentives and extra stuff. But you also look at this, you're able to sign a bat here that is consistent, except I get the injury concerns are there, and that's kind of the flyer you take. But with Real Muto, you have to make the trade, which means that the guys that you want to kind of try and build, you want to try and kind of build your club around youth-wise are going to have to be part of that trade package to the Miami Marlins. The crazy thing here, you look at this, in the last couple of years when Ramos has really been healthy, he's been a mid 260s to upper 270s hitter. And then when he was with the Nationals and then last year as well between both ball clubs, an above 300 hitter, those numbers are a little bit better than JT Real Muto. Now, Ramos kind of sits in the mid-teens to maybe he gets lucky and cracks the 20 home run mark. And when you look at Real Muto, he's going to hit just a little bit more than that. But I think at the end of the day, the only thing you really were getting with Real Muto was some youth, and maybe a little bit more control. But I don't think that for this amount of money that you actually are going to guarantee Ramos, I don't think they put themselves in a bad spot. I kind of like the move.
I do. I think it's a good pickup. The concern for me comes in the fact that Wilson Ramos has never played more than 130 games in his career. Ever. In 9 years, he's never had a season where he cracked 132. His 131 is his highest number of games played in a single season. When you look at that and you look at the fact that his numbers are sort of inflated by the fact that he doesn't play every day. You signed a 38-year-old, now you signed a 32-year-old, and you're going to pay them a combined total of almost $50 million. And in my opinion, that's going the wrong direction for what the New York Mets need. They need to get young. They need to make runs at younger players because, look, I get he's only on a short contract, couple of years, but the question mark is in his health, and I'm afraid that this is an attempt again, like the new general manager of the Mets said, that they're trying to become relevant this year or next year. I don't think that this really makes them relevant in the next year or two.
I don't disagree with you on that premise, but I don't know that picking up Real Muto would make you relevant either. And it doesn't make you relevant in the next year or two, but it gives you an opportunity to be relevant 2 or 3 years down the road. It does, but you're already at a guy who's arbitration eligible, right? If you look at a $19 million guaranteed contract over 2 years, you're looking at roughly, $8.5 million, give or take, with some incentives, with the $2 million signing bonus, he makes about $6.25 million per year. But with arbitration to Real Muto, he's already making $2 million this year, and he's probably going to go up to $3 or $4 million in the next couple of years. Sure, maybe you save a couple of $1 million in payroll with Real Muto, but you also have to give up pieces to go out and get him. I think Ramos still gives you a decent placeholder for now until you find the catcher that you want to be, the mainstay behind that plate. And hey, if Ramos can stay healthy, you've got a good bat, you've got a solid catcher who can really make this, the battery of arms that you have that should be dominant in the National League East, maybe feel a bit more comfortable. And if it's that veteran piece that they need to kind of walk into a game and have that feeling of, of peace in those difficult moments, that could be worth the extra $2 million just by itself. And again, you only get Ramos for 2 years. It's a pay-for-play kind of deal. Does really well. He's going to find himself with a bigger contract for probably another 2 or 3 year deal when he hits 34-ish.
Right. And the interesting thing to see is going to be whether or not he can maintain his discipline. He's not the most disciplined of hitters, but he doesn't strike out as much as some other guys who get on base as much as he does, which is interesting. Last year he finished the season with 80 strikeouts and 32 walks. Not a great ratio, right?
About 2.5 to 1.
Right. Not the 2 or fewer that you want to see, but still a decent ratio. And if you can maintain that sort of thing, and if he can play 150 games and hit 280 like he's projected to do, I think that it could be good for them.
Right.
I'm just worried about him staying healthy.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much at the point where we're at, where that makes. I think that's it's the most logical concern, and it would be foolish to not have that as a point of contention. But at the end of the day, it's free agency. You're taking a flyer, and you have a guy right now who in 2 of his last 3 seasons has been an all-star and has hit over 300 both those years. I think at the end of it, it does give you a decent chance in a park that should be relatively hitter friendly to him, for him, to give him a chance to succeed. Moving on from the New York Mets, as we mentioned, the Cleveland Indians have made quite the story, and we're going to touch on this ball club a couple of times throughout the show. But the Houston Astros have agreed to terms with outfielder Michael Brantley. That officially came through, I believe, either yesterday, kind of late last night, or this morning. Basically right around $16 million per year for him. And there have been, again, injuries have been kind of sort of a concern with him, but he's a piece that has a pretty good sized bat. Played in 143 games last year after only playing in 101 games in 2016 and 2017 combined. And even in those 90 games in 2017, still managed to be an all-star. Hit 309 last year, an 832 OPS, 17 dingers, and more to your point of a disciplined hitter, a guy who gets on base at a 364 clip, walked 48 times, struck out 60 times, definitely in that happy range. He might not be a power out of the park kind of guy, but with the pop that he has, and a guy who consistently is in the 150 or higher hits per season range, with that small Minute Maid Park that is in Houston, this could be a chance for Michael Brantley to really have an offensive explosion on his stat sheet for the next couple of years if he can stay healthy and really find a good groove there in Houston.
Right, I think so, absolutely. I think that one of the things about Michael Brantley is he's one of those guys who represents a best case scenario for coming back from a serious injury. He goes down in 2015 diving for the ball in Minnesota, I think it was. Hurt his shoulder, had 2 surgeries to get it repaired. Misses the run to the World Series, makes the All-Star game the following season, but can't play more than 90 games. Comes back late, but he comes back last year, and like you said, plays 143 games, and it's exactly what you want to see from a guy who goes down to a serious injury like that. I think he's going to be huge for the Houston Astros. I don't know that it's the kind of thing where you say, hey, this is the kind of signing that makes the Houston Astros favorites to contend for the World Series title next year. Obviously, the Houston Astros are in that World Series talk. They probably are going to be for the next few years, at least, until we see an actual reduction in the ability to pitch from
Verlander and Cole.
Verlander, thank you.
Yeah.
Or until someone finally reveals the fact that Justin Verlander is a robot.
Now, hold on now. There is nothing in the CBA preventing him, if he is found to be such, from actively participating. Now, that could hurt his Hall of Fame candidacy. But
doesn't that make him a pitching machine, though?
Didn't we already establish that he pretty much is one?
Oh, right. a dangerous one. I think that this is the kind of pickup that when we look at it from the perfect 2020 rear view vision of next offseason, we're still going to be saying this was a good idea. They picked him up relatively cheap, $32 million for 2 years. He's going to make, 15, 16 million a year. That's not a whole bunch of money in comparison to some of the guys that they're paying big money to. So, yeah, I like it. And if he can even come close to the numbers that he put up in Cleveland this year, which I don't see any reason to that he wouldn't, especially moving into the AL West where he's going to face, the A's and the Mariners, who, despite being good teams, have some pitching problems. He's going to face guys with high ERAs who I think he's going to probably tee off on for the most part. I think this is a great move for him, and I think it's a great move for the Houston Astros.
Well, and let's, we mentioned this name a minute ago, but JT Realmuto is not going to be in Miami in March. There's a possibility that, with the, Max Stassi is still there. Right now, Robinson Chirinos is the number one catcher because Brian McCann, we know, has moved on, has re-signed, or has gone back to the Atlanta Braves. But, man, you're at a point right now where, and I'm going to say these names, understanding that that saying Realmuto is not a guaranteed conclusion. Okay,
sure.
JT Realmuto, Yuli Gurriel, Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, George Springer, Michael Brantley. That is the lineup. That's just a start of the guys that you have to face up and down the Astros lineup if they get all these guys in here. I mean, that's stupid.
It's murderer's row, man. It really is. It's murderer's row. Because
this is a team that I think Brantley is a great piece. And I think he complements Altuve well because Altuve is a big hitter who embraces small ball but gets really big ball results, if that makes sense. And I think that with Brantley, it's kind of the same thing. Like, Altuve isn't one of those – he's not trying to be a power hitter. But when he makes contact, a guy who's hitting 320, 330, to me it's different.
Does Jose Altuve have any choice but to embrace small ball? I'm sorry. I shouldn't make short jokes. I apologize. He is the smallest player in Major League Baseball. Just saying.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. And one of the problems that one of the really great things is not a problem. Well, it's a problem for everybody else, especially everybody in the American League West, because I think that the Astros are just a foregone conclusion for the American League West again this year for the division. Is that when you look at what Michael Brantley is projected to do next year, and I know projections are hard, but if you look at what Michael Brantley is projected to do next year, it's nowhere near what he did this year, but it's still the sort of numbers that you look at and you go, that's the kind of guy who I want hitting in my 2, 3, 4 spot on my baseball team.
Maybe 5 or 6. I mean,
on the Astros, 5 or 6. But you're talking about a guy who's going to hit 15 home runs and hit 300. You want him early in the lineup. And he's not the fastest guy on the field, so he's not like the one guy. He's not the number one slot hitter. But if you can get him either –
That'll be Springer for a while. I mean, yes. I think pretty much Springer, Altuve, and either Correa, Bregman, however you want to do it, is pretty much going to be your 4. Maybe you can bump Gurriel down and then put Bregman as 5. I think 5 would make sense. But to me, this is not a splash signing just because it's not a Harper, not a huge name. But to me, this is a great complementary piece that I think makes the Astros a very, very good team and really puts them at it ups their echelon a little bit more, and they were already sitting in that top tier, but it makes them a little bit more formidable.
To be honest, it's not a splash signing, but I think it's the kind of signing that when you look at it, Michael Brantley probably does more to make the Astros a better team than Bryce Harper is going to do wherever he goes. Just because I think with what we've heard from the Los Angeles Dodgers, from the New York Yankees, with Washington signing Pat Corbin, I don't think that Bryce Harper's headed to a contender.
The Dodgers may have just changed the landscape of free agency yesterday with that report that came out through Bleacher Report and a couple of other outlets saying that they don't want to get tied down into a Harper with a long-term, multi-year, high-dollar deal. That they want to keep it around the 5, 6, maybe 4 or 5 year margin and not going into a decade.
Yeah, and especially when you hear their exact phrasing, which was, "We're not interested in a long-term record-setting deal with Bryce Harper," which that's what Bryce Harper is looking for, because that's what the media has prepped him for ever since he was an MVP.
Those are powerful words. Very, very powerful words.
Which pushes Bryce Harper towards a Chicago White Sox, towards the Philadelphia Phillies. I think Philadelphia is the one place that Bryce Harper could land at this point that you might actually say is a contending team.
Right. Agreed. But
Michael Brantley.
But with the way, as we go on discussing on the show, the way the Indians are selling off pieces, the White Sox might be there to go ahead and take that AL Central. This might be an entirely reshaped AL Central come 2019.
Well, I don't understand what the Indians are doing, because not only are they dumping salary, which I get, I understand dumping salary. I understand trying to get younger. I understand trying to get, trying to retool. And what I don't understand is giving those pieces away to people who are in your division.
Sure.
That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to send big names to the Chicago White Sox. And now you have the Chicago White Sox in a position to not only land Bryce Harper because they can afford him, right? Because everybody on that team, what do we say? They have like 5 guys under full-time contract on the Chicago White Sox.
Right.
So they can afford him, but they pick up Yonder Alonso from the Cleveland Indians,
which we'll talk about.
Who's Manny Machado's brother-in-law?
You know what? I know this kind of got a little bit out of the order, but let's go there. I mean, you bring it up, and I think, it begs, the whole thing begs a question, and it's one of those things that I really don't know. I don't know how Terry Francona will be able to answer this when we get a chance to hopefully ask him in January. I'm not sure there really is any easy way to answer that doesn't probably get him in some sort of hot water. But I mean, it's just, you look at this, and they trade Yonder Alonso to the White Sox. They get Alex Call back from the White Sox, and we're talking, this kid last year played in high A ball and low double A. So, I mean, we're not even getting, I don't even think we're getting major league ready prospects back. He's a career 256 hitter in the minor leagues, hit 248 last year, hit 12 home runs, now had 4 triples, 28 doubles, 107 hits, and 431 official at-bats, 60 walks, 127 strikeouts. Now granted, his on base is almost 100 points higher than his average was last year, but I mean, this made no sense to me, because I mean, we said this, that was undeniably, the weakest division that there was last year, but now you're trading off pieces, because Edwin Encarnacion was moved off in a 3-way deal. And that's where Carlos Santana came back to Cleveland, which we mentioned at the top of the show. But so many moves here that just don't make legitimate sense for the Indians to stay a contender, because it means Kipnis has to be on the way out. They've been trying to find a place for him to show productivity, to move him. That leaves Lindor. I think they were able to get Carlos Carrasco to re-sign. You're trying for Bauer. You're hoping for Kluber, but I mean, arms are great, but you've got to have some bat, and Lindor can't do it by himself.
Right, and my expectation is that Corey Kluber is not going to be there in March. So,
if he's there to money grab, yes. I mean, to me,
yeah, no, I completely agree. Absolutely, if he's still there in March, it's absolutely because they're going to give him they're going to pay him what he wants. But don't get me wrong, Yonder Alonso is not the make or break player for the Chicago White Sox to be a contender next year. But what he brings with him, not necessarily just what he can do on the field, but what he brings with him in possibilities, shall we say? His sister being married to Manny Machado makes that it makes the Chicago White Sox, who have a lot of payroll available.
No, wait. Hang on. I thought Machado's sister was married to Yonder Alonso.
No. Yonder Alonso's sister is married to Manny Machado.
Okay.
And he said very openly when they asked him about it, he said, I want to be neighbors with Manny Machado. He's married to my sister, and I want to see my sister. Well, if that entices Machado to look at Chicago, who has a lot of money available, and then Bryce Harper, who the White Sox are on his short list anyway, you land both of those guys because you have a bunch of salary available to throw at them. And then, the AL Central is a different place. And in picking up a guy who might entice a Manny Machado, you've also picked up a guy who, while he only hits about 250, I think he's a career 260 hitter or 265 hitter, he hit 23 home runs last year. He had 83 ribbies last year. And he's a decent defensive first baseman. I think that's an important thing for the Chicago White Sox at this point. And he's not expensive. He made $7 million last year. I don't expect him to make much more than $7 million this year. That's not a lot of money, and it doesn't take them out of the race for either one or both of those other guys.
I mean, not a high WAR player by any stretch, but I mean, like you said, this is one of those things where the White Sox are piecing this damn thing together, man. And they're piecing together. It's not the most shabby thing, we've ever seen. So hats off to them right now. I mean, they're looking to make some big splashes, and damn it, that's what they're going to try and do. And as long as Yonder and Machado get along well, everything that we have heard is that the Phillies and the White Sox expect to be contenders in the race for one, or I don't think it's possible to get both, but at least one of these two guys. And I'm with you. Machado likes the East Coast. Maybe he goes to Philly, but I think the White Sox are putting themselves in good position to make this look like a really enticing team. They're going to need pitching. It's going to have to happen. You hope that Michael Kopech, one of the big, Thor Jr. that came over from the Nationals in the Adam Eaton trade, came over from, I think, Boston in the Sale trade, actually, gets healthy. I think he had TJ surgery. Hopefully he gets healthy. But, it doesn't make any sense. And that brings us to the other side of this, which is the Mariners, Indians, and Tampa Bay Rays get a 3-team swap going where Encarnacion goes from Cleveland to Seattle. Carlos Santana comes back to Cleveland after he left last year because, and this is what got me, is the Indians didn't want to pay Carlos Santana what he wanted. So he went to Philadelphia. They offered, and Terry Francona told us, we offered him something. He wanted more out of our price range. We couldn't do it. But now you're okay bringing him back. Doesn't make a damn lick of sense to me whatsoever on that. They also, the Rays pick up Yandy Diaz and Cole Sulser, and they send Jake Bauers to the Indians. It seems that in the end of this, Bauers is one of those guys who maybe draws the biggest eyebrow raise just because, okay, what is who is this guy? But last year he barely hit over the Mendoza line, 1 point above 200, an OPS of 700, 48 ribbies, 11 dingers in 96 games. This kid's 22 years old though. So, you're expecting him to hopefully kind of grow and produce as he matures in the game. But I don't know, man. We know the Indians don't like a lot of payroll. So I don't know. I just
my question with Jake Bauers there is he's young and you have control of him for quite a while, being that last year was his rookie year. But I don't know that does he need to spend some time down in the minor leagues? I don't know that he's major leagues ready, especially not for a team like the Indians who need to contend again. Because if the Indians don't contend again, it's going to be a big deal for Terry Francona.
Well, he's been in the minor leagues since he was 17. He's been in the minor leagues since 2013. Played rookie ball in Arizona for the Padres. Was in Double-A or in low A ball and high A ball between 14 and 15. Went to Double-A in 15 and then was in Triple-A 16, 17. So he's been up and down. His minor league numbers are more of a 276 career hitter. Had 52 RBI in 2,219 at bat. So 328 RBI, 52 home runs rather. So it's nothing terrible, but again, they're taking a flyer here on hoping this kid kind of blossoms for them. But in doing so, is it a big deal you get rid of Encarnacion? Probably not. He had that couple of big years in Toronto and got a big payday and then hasn't really produced, never really seemed overly comfortable in Cleveland. You get Santana back. Santana seemed like a guy who needs other pieces around him to really be successful. He didn't seem as dominant in Philadelphia as it seemed that he was in Cleveland, even though the numbers really weren't that much different. Just odd how the optics really seemed to kind of favor Cleveland over Philadelphia for him. But again, man, this is just one of those things where Cleveland is shedding payroll. We know they hate to pay, but I don't
one
know.
of the things it doesn't make a lot of sense to get rid of Encarnacion to pick up Santana. They're essentially the same hitter. They're basically the same guy. So, and if Santana is going to perform the way he did in Philadelphia, they've not added anything except that he's younger and he costs less. But he doesn't hit as many home runs. He's still a 240 hitter. He's still going to get on base at a 350 clip, which is about what Encarnacion does. His WAR's a little bit higher, I think, because of his defensive capabilities.
Right.
But I don't see how this really helps them become better. So you've got to return to this idea that all they're trying to do is cut, get rid of the money. And then, I don't know, rebuild? Is that where they are? Are we looking at an Indians team that's shedding payroll to rebuild with?
Well, they aren't a team that likes payroll to begin with, but it's just odd to see a team 2 years removed, from a World Series run where it seemed like they really had the pieces to go back and forth. And we've seen some pretty key injuries to some of their their relief staff. Obviously, Andrew Miller not nearly what he was when you got him. I think that he got overworked and overused by Francona in 2016. That's a hard thing to admit, but it really seems like he worked the ever living crap out of him in that postseason run, and he hasn't been right since. But at the end of this, the Mariners have to be at least trying to maybe get something out of Encarnacion. They pick up what is likely going to be a top 80 pick in the draft out of this deal as well. Maybe you can, if Encarnacion plays half decent, maybe you can go ahead and get a team to take him and pick off a couple of good, percentage chunks of his salary off your books. But at the end of the day, this is just one of those things where, the Rays, I think, know what they're up against still in the American League East, and they're just trying to go ahead and get something to get something for what they have, because last year was a fluke, and I don't know if they really expect to be able to contend again in the way that they showed to be able to contend last year, even though the overall layout of that division didn't lend itself to their long-term postseason success.
I think, from my point of view, this trade makes the most sense for the Seattle Mariners because they picked up Carlos Santana by sending They picked up Santana by sending
Gene Segura to the Phillies.
They get Carlos Santana, who's owed quite a bit of money, not next year, but coming up. His contract's getting larger. They immediately flip him for basically the same hitter in Edwin Encarnacion. They bring Encarnacion, who's owed a lot of money this year, but not owed a lot of money in the future. If you look at all the deals that they've made, they've shed over $100 million in future salary, which frees them up into the future to really pick up, some young, good talent. And plus they're getting these trades back, or these draft picks back, helping them get younger, which Seattle is a team that really has needed to get younger for a long time. They get
they want to run a Kluber or a Trevor Bauer. If you do the deal with Cleveland enough, and maybe they know that these guys are going to go, maybe you get a chance to go ahead and get in on these guys, and then find a way to get some extra sticks and and rebuild faster than people think you might be able to.
I do have to say, I don't think that Encarnacion is going to play in Seattle.
Do you think he gets flipped again before the beginning of the year?
I do, yeah, because it makes sense because it'll make sense to other teams who need a designated hitter. And when you look at teams who could need a first baseman or a designated hitter, teams like the Twins, teams like the Rockies, need a first baseman.
Okay.
I said need a first baseman or a designated hitter.
Okay. Sorry.
So, teams like the Twins, teams like the Rockies, that could use a bat and are in a position to make that move. This could be an ability for them to, I think, trade up and down at the same time, shed payroll, even more so shed payroll, get maybe back some young talent for Edwin Encarnacion, who's, because of Carlos Santana's optics, like you were saying in Philadelphia, being worse in Philadelphia than they were in Cleveland, but Encarnacion looks like a hero in Cleveland, even though he's the same hitter.
Right.
I don't know what it is about hitting in Cleveland that makes 250 or 240 look good.
Cleveland rise, man.
Yeah, but Encarnacion's trade stock might be higher at this point for some of those teams, and they dish him for a couple of really good major league ready prospects, or even a big name or two that's under control and not eligible for arbitration for a couple of years. And all of a sudden they've just shed like a bunch of payroll and gotten some good pieces back for it.
Well, they better hope they can get rid of him before he begins to play in Seattle, because 240 looks really depressing in a wet and dreary Pacific Northwest.
Well, it looks really depressing in a place that's really depressing.
Love you, Seattle.
We do. I'll never move back there, but I love you to death.
Finally, we will save the worst for last. Now, the Yankees, obviously we know they missed on Corbin. Cashman really hedged his bet, trying to go out there and make it known that they wanted him. Didn't work out. They go out and end up signing J. Happ to a 2-year deal. Not the worst thing in the world. $34 million for 2 years, a vesting option for the 2021 season, pending a physical, as is almost everything. The vesting option would be $17 million if Happ gets to 165 innings and or 27 starts in the year 2020. Not the worst thing in the world, man. I mean, Happ has been – we've seen some really impressive stuff from him when he was with Toronto, and we've seen some things from him that make you go, what in the hell is going on? But again, last year, traded from Toronto to the Yankees and went 7-0 in New York with a 2.69 ERA in 11 games. They re-signed him. He's got 109 wins to 82 losses for his career. Not the worst thing in the world. We've seen some up and down years for him, but man, I mean, when he went 20-4 in 2016, 20 wins with a 3.18 ERA and finishes 6th in the Cy Young voting. That just tells you how stupid it was. That was the year that you and I called Rick Porcello, and our buddy Adnan Verk told us we were crazy, and until we were right. Then he came on the show and had to bow down to our superiority just once, because we've been awful every other time.
Well, and because he is legitimately better than us.
Yes.
So it was a fluke, like one-time thing.
Hey. That's all it takes, man.
But if they can get similar production out of him that they got out of him last year, where he won 7 games, 7 of 11 of his starts, and had a low sub-3 ERA. He didn't pitch a lot, but when he was pitching, he was pretty effective. So if they can get an effective 27 starts out of him, I doubt he'll ever be as effective as he was in 2016. He is, 35 years old. I think he's going to be 36 when the season starts. He won't be. Actually, he'll be 36 when next season ends.
Yeah.
But, he's 36 now.
Yeah, no, he'll be 37 October 19th.
Right, October 19th, yeah.
So I mean, maybe he'll be 37 during next year's season. We'll see how good the Yankees do.
It could be. They've got some work to do against those Boston Red Sox, who I think are going to probably dominate the East again. But if they can get that kind of production out of him, if he can be an effective 3.5 ERA kind of guy, it's what they need. Right. I mean, they've doubled down on Sabathia yet again.
There's a good story there that we'll touch on here in just a minute as well with the Yanks and Sabathia.
Are you talking about where he gets his bonus even though he didn't hit the numbers?
Yeah,
I was going to ask you about how you felt about that.
I like it. There wasn't much doubt he was going to likely be able to. I mean, they were probably going to go ahead and let him pitch until he got into that. He needed 6 outs, and after the Rays it seemed pretty evident that they intentionally hit Austin Romine, the catcher for the. When you and I watched the replay of that ejection, there was not a whole hell of a lot of, I wonder. And Sabathia said, "To hell with that," and turned around and plunked I don't know if it was Kurt Casale. I'm not sure which of the Rays catchers it was, but I mean he wore one flush, and immediately they ejected Sabathia. He had no gripes about it. I mean he walked off, and it just, I mean, to me, it just endears him more so. And again, we're not gonna get into our whole using a baseball as a weapon thing. I'm not going there, but when your guy was hit intentionally, at the end of the day, no one's really going to shed a tear. I get it sucks for the guy that got hit, but tell your pitcher not to be a jerk, and you won't have to worry the repercussions of it at the same time. It's just that is part of the game that is still there and won't go away. And that's one of the, I think that we aren't too interested in legislating out of the game. But again, umpires did the right thing as well. Tossed him. There was no question. There was immediate intent back. They made the right call. And I think Brian Cashman and the Yankees, who again made the right call by not having to go ahead and give Sabathia his $500,000 bonus for his innings limit. But you know what? Said with everything you did for what you meant to this team and what you did costing you that, they in good faith offered him and gave him a check for that bonus.
So I have a question. When you hear Sabathia, Severino, Tanaka, Happ, Paxton, his big arm that they added to that rotation, and although I'm almost positive that he's going to get traded before the season starts, Sonny Gray, is that a rotation?
He has to get traded.
Yeah, he does. Is that a rotation? Even if there's, let's give him the benefit of the doubt between Sabathia, Paxton, Tanaka, and maybe Severino, that there's 4 15-game winners in that group.
If you're going to ask me my first thought is coin flip.
Right. My question is that the type of rotation that can win a World Series? Factoring in the Red Sox.
Yes, because I think comparing the two, if I mean, obviously, I think going into this, depending on again what the Astros do, which is a big big caveat in this whole discussion, but the Red Sox and the Yankees are I mean, it's going to be an unstoppable force, meaning an immovable object, right? And if you and I look at this, and I don't think that there is really a whole lot of argument here, the Yankees had undeniably, to me, the better bullpen. Undeniably, to me, the better back end, on that. And it's just the Red Sox had a crap ton of power. Almost caught myself saying what I wasn't supposed to say there. Good job. But, right. I mean, I think that the rotation was a bit of a weakness, a chink in the armor, a chink in the pinstripes, if you will. And, Sonny Gray was weak. They tried getting Lance Lynn. That didn't really work out for him. Severino can be really, really good, but he still seems to be young, can get shaken really easily. We still haven't seen a really definitive, strong performance from him, right, in the postseason. And you hope that getting a guy like Jay Happ, who has that, really long-time veteran, feel around the game. There are moments in this, where I think some age and experience benefits a club like this in the biggest media market in the world. And guys like a Brett Gardner and a Sabathia and a Jay Happ, I think really lends itself to the success of this ball club because of the young talent you have in Judge and Sanchez and Severino and Stanton, et cetera. Right.
And Brian Cashman has been pretty open about the fact that he's excited about having Jay Happ back. If you can get all 17 of the wins that he had last season for New York this season, I think that it's a solid move. But he's also been pretty open about the fact that he's not necessarily done looking at starting pitchers, which is interesting. We know that Sonny Gray is definitely he has to go. Sonny Gray has to go.
One way or another. He can't be effective as a reliever.
Right. He re-signs Sabathia. He re-signs Happ. He picks up James Paxton. He's got Severino and Tanaka under contract. That's 5 guys. That's 5 starting pitchers. but he's saying that he's still looking. And one of the interesting things that that I read was they're looking at this kid, Yusei Kikuchi. I don't know if you've heard him or not. Now, he plays in Japan currently, but he's visiting MLB teams right now, and they have had conversations with Kikuchi. Cashman has had conversations with him and his agent, Scott Boras. Hugely talented pitcher. And also, I think the kind of guy who, if you put him on the Yankees, is going to mesh very well with Masahiro Tanaka, because it gives Tanaka somebody in the clubhouse that he can talk to. Right? It gives Tanaka a guy that he can mesh with, right? Speaks the same language, has similar experiences, both played very well in Japan, both play very well. He could play very well here. And if that makes Tanaka a better pitcher, or makes Tanaka get into that place that we've wanted him to get into, where he's a more consistent type of starter, that could be very dangerous. That could make Tanaka very dangerous.
Yeah, I get your point. Last year, again, we haven't seen anything compared to his rookie year, right? When he went 13-5 in 2014. Granted, he went 12-7 the year after, but then his ERA ballooned to 3.5, and we haven't seen an ERA below 3 since then. Last year was a 3.75 ERA, though he went 12-6. I guess really the thing here is, the whole gyro ball and all this kind of craziness behind him it materialized, but really kind of it was fleeting. I don't know if a guy who will be 30 years old this year needs that bring in a young kid from where I'm from to make me feel better. I mean, the guy's a professional, and at the same time, now in a different team, I would agree, but the Yankees have a track record as I stutter that, I'm sorry, of successfully managing personnel from mainly Japan, from the Nippon League. We've seen a lot of effective guys come over from there, and this is a ball club who I think really understands how to cater and make these guys feel comfortable as they find their way into the major league game, and for a good chunk become somewhat to fairly moderately successful. I think Tanaka's on that route. I think this, at the end of the day, it's just more of an injury thing for him. The arm injuries began to kind of pile up, and we've still seen a guy, 14 wins in 2016, 13 last year, 2 years ago in 17, and 12 last year. The wins are about the same. If we could see him up to about 30 games. He was in 27 last year. The arm health appears to be back. It's just at some point,
which is heartening, right? Because it was worrisome there for a while. His health, his ability to stay healthy, his ability to take the ball every 5 days was beginning to become worrisome. And I think that Tanaka is probably, I don't want to say Tanaka's the guy that you have to look at and say, okay, CC Sabathia is coming to the end of his career. Luis Severino is coming to the end of his career. But Masahiro, well, maybe not, but he should be. I don't know. I don't like Severino. Anyway.
Well, that's not liking him is one thing, but when we're looking at his, the guy's 24 years old. He's just beginning his career.
Severino? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not thinking. I'm sorry. Wrong guy. I said the wrong name. Happ is coming to the end of his career.
Right.
Because I don't think Happ's going to go 20 years. I don't think he's I don't think that he's a 20-year type starter.
Well, and again, I think that's why the vesting option, I think, occurs in 2020. You get 2 years out of him through 37, 38, whatever it is, and you see what can happen.
Right. Where I was going with Severino's probably the guy that you want to look at and say, okay, he's going to be the face of our starting rotation for the next. But Tanaka's got to be the next guy in line, right? I mean, Tanaka's got to be the next guy. You got to be the guy you want next in line. Either that or Paxton. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's probably Tanaka. I mean, even again last year, we talk about Snell being the only 20-game winner, I think, in the American League. Right behind him was Severino at 19 wins.
Severino, right?
And a pretty respectable 3.39 ERA. So again,
right.
The concern here lies more so with the postseason with Severino. I still expect Severino to, he should be taking over that number one mantle pretty soon. But if you're going to pay Sabathia, you're probably still letting him be the leader of that rotation.
Well, I think you have to, right? Because at this point, you can't make CC Sabathia lose face like that. And while I understand that, you look at CC Sabathia as a guy who's probably not going to take it as a slight to him personally that he moves down in the rotation, it's going to look like that, especially to a fan base like the New York Yankees have. They're not going to take it well. I don't.
Well, on the bright side, Sabathia is not going to be the opening day starter. And even though he was 9-7 last year, he's suspended the first 5 games of the year because of that beanball incident. So that makes the choice maybe easier or harder for Boone. I think Boone puts Severino. I think Sevy makes the most sense, and it's a great chance to go ahead and give him that spot to start off. At this point, with Sabathia pitching 153 innings last year, man, I think we're at the point now where, you know what, he might need to sit back. He is the voice and kind of the daddy of that rotation, but he might need to take a number 3 seat, or maybe a number 4 seat. And I think at this point, you know what, dude, you're 37, you're 38, that's okay. It's just kind of where it sits. But again, as we're kind of getting away, but I like the move to
did I ever tell you that I played against CC Sabathia? In high school?
Really?
Yeah. I never hit against him. I played against the team that he played for, but I never played when he was pitching.
Thankfully.
Probably. I mean, I would assume thankfully. I don't want to be in that position. CC Sabathia went to Vallejo High School.
Okay.
And we played them a couple of times in CIF tournaments.
Okay.
That's a California Invitational.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I played against CC Sabathia in 1997, I think.
Interesting. Still a pretty big boy.
He was a big boy, yes.
Yeah.
Well, the guy's 6'6". I don't know that he was 300 pounds then, but he was 6'6" then. He was the more svelte CC Sabathia that we saw early in his career, but still a big boy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he was quite a huge individual. But at the end of the day, man, yeah, I think a lot of moves this week. We're seeing a lot more things happen than they did last year, which I think is good. It makes it more enjoyable, even if Harper and Machado take a while. There are a lot of names, I think, that are getting shuffled, and a lot of shuffling that's happening that really can make this offseason, I won't say tumultuous, but it's going to make it really interesting, and that's going to be a lot of fun for us on the show.
Right. Well, and last year was so bad because it was so cold for so long. We had weeks and weeks in a row where we were like, okay, well, nothing's happened. And it doesn't feel like anything's going to happen. At least now, with all the moves that have been made so far, I feel like we have a pretty good feeling that, hey, next week we're going to have something to talk about. Next week something's going to have happened, or several things are going to have happened that we can talk about. And plus, hey, we got Hall of Fame stuff to talk about soon.
Yeah, this is going to be quite a ballot we'll go through as we normally do, all the new guys will be on the ballot. We'll touch on the remaining guys who we think will get in that are on the ballot, are ballot returners, and of course we'll get pretty in depth with the first year guys. Before we go, I just want to say from all of us here at the Grueling Truth Network, and especially for Chris and I and everyone here that has a hand in the show, we want to wish you obviously happy Hanukkah if you're just finishing up celebrating. Of course, Merry Christmas and happy holidays for everybody else out there as well. And if you're furry, if I'm happy, a good Festivus.
Yule.
A Festivus for the rest of us.
Yule is what I celebrate.
Yule, me, them, y'all. However, you say Yule, I say y'all. It's a matter of where you live.
Sure, absolutely. You say y'all? Do you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I have it. It's in my predictive text, man.
Oh wow. I mean, I say y'all too, but I don't know why. I'm from California. We do say y'all in California sometimes.
Same reason you listen to country music. Has two thumbs, wearing a red shirt. This guy.
Nobody likes you.
What?
Nobody likes you.
That's beside the point. We aren't discussing that at the moment.
You've gotten me in more trouble than almost anybody I've ever met.
That is saying a whole hell of a lot because I know way more about you than anybody listening to the show. And
you've gotten me in more trouble with my spouse than anyone I've ever met.
Okay. Likewise. You've gotten me in more trouble with your spouse than anyone I've ever met.
No. You're in trouble for the things that you got me in trouble for.
Anyway, guys, again, we hope that you all have a very safe and enjoyable holiday. And again, Merry Christmas to everybody out there. Happy Hanukkah if you just finished celebrating it. We will be back after the holiday. We'll be right back right about the turn of the year. So, hell, you know what? You guys might have, well, you'll probably hear from us before next year, but right near the tail end of the, yes, Chris, yep. New Year's comes a week after Christmas.
Right. I didn't know if we were taking 2 weeks off or.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
I mean, hey, all right, look, I'm going to break this down for everybody real quick before we sign off here. We when we were in the Army, we had some days that some evenings that were quite enjoyable. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Okay. You're a teacher,
right,
who's about to go on winter break.
Ooh, right. Not a whole lot of sobriety going to be happening.
So again, I was trying to tacitly and politely look out for you. Tonight,
I appreciate
trouble
that.
with said spouse you were speaking of.
I appreciate that. And so does my liver, to be honest.
All right. So for last time, guys, again, have a great holiday. Enjoy it with your family. Hope everyone has a really safe and enjoyable Christmas. We look forward to seeing you guys back here, and hopefully we'll have a lot more baseball presents to unwrap for you on Out of Left Field. See you guys next time.